Hello there. Welcome to another Pen Positive episode. This is Vinod Narayan. Today I have an interesting book for you. The book is called The Hype Machine by Sinan Aral. And before we get into the book, if you have not subscribed to the channel, do subscribe. And also, we've got a podcast, or rather, I've got a podcast of solo rants. It's called the Pen Positive Outclass. And it's a podcast where every week I take some time to look back at the week and see what I learned and share that with you. It's more like a journal of an active learner. So you can get that on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Audible, or Spotify, or any of the podcasting platforms. So do check that out. It's called Pen Positive Outclass. You can also go and check penpositiveoutclass.com and you can look at some of the earlier episodes that I did. It was an evolving podcasting model. I try new things and I used to do it on a daily basis and then moved it into a weekly podcast. But let's get into the book. So first let me tell you how I came up to read this book, because I think it's important for us to know from where we get the ideas of reading books. A lot of people ask me, how did you select to read that book? Many times what happens is you follow certain people and there are authors who generously tell us what they are looking forward. One of the example would be Adam Grant, who every summer he tells what are the books he's looking forward for this summer, this fall, this winter. So I think following some of the authors would be a good way to know what books you should read. It might not be possible for you to read all the books, but at least you get an idea of what the books are. And this year, 2021, I think most of the books that I started reading were books that Adam Grant did introduce. Now, this particular book, Hype Machine, it happened to be that I listened to Vasanthar's podcast, The Brave New World, and in that one of the episodes, Sinan Aral had been there and he was talking about social media and the hype machine, and I came to know that there was a book like this. Checked up in the library, it was there, picked it up and read it. So also Vasanthar's podcast, I got to know about it because one of my friend who works in NYU told me that this is a podcast that you should listen to. And so it's always through our connections, through our contacts, that we get to know what is it to be read, what are the things that we should learn more about, and what are the facts and what are the real things that are happening. And I think that's why Hype Machine is a very important book that irrespective of whether you use social media or not, you should be reading this book. It tells you what is happening inside this whole social media, the hype machine. How is it changing the way we are looking at the world, our perspectives, and how are we connecting? And whether you like it or not, one thing is for sure, it's not going to go away. Maybe the companies that do the social media or build the social media platforms, there might be new companies that will come. There might be new ways of interacting, but social media, the whole idea of social media is there to stay. Maybe a different platform, maybe different company, but we're going to have it in one way or the other. So even if you're not using it, your kids are going to use it, and you in some way or the other are going to be influenced by that. So what I really liked about Sinan mentioning in the book is we always have been recently listening to people say documentaries or articles saying that social media is all bad. It's negative. It's really playing with our brains, our thinking and everything. But that's probably partly true. And or rather, I would say that that's all true, but still there is more to it. And I think that's where Sinan comes to the point is that, there's a lot of things that you can do better, but completely painting it in a negative shade would not be right. So one interesting thing he talks about is responsibility. So what is the responsibility of the company, of the people who create the platforms and the features in the platforms that keep us hooked to it? So there are some changes that the companies should do to ensure that you have a positive outcome of using social media, that it's not all negative. and how can we minimize the negative aspects, negative impacts of social media on us human beings. Now, there's something that the company can do. Now, there's also a responsibility that government officials and policymakers can do in terms of ensuring that our data privacy and such things are taken care of, and we don't get into some kind of a problem because our data is compromised. So that's one part where the authorities and government probably have to work on what policy should that be, and that's those are the discussions that we have seen, a lot of those conversations going on and off, and we have seen the GDPR regulations that happen in Europe, and we know that the ad industry in Europe had major problems when the GDPR was implemented, because it really impacted the ad revenue, or rather it really impacted the companies investing into ad, because you did not have that kind of a data available for advertisement. So always there is this thing of having data that needs to be available for people to target and retarget you, and at the same time you also want your data not to be compromised. So what are the policies that need to come? What are the policies that probably need to come? So there is a responsibility on that side as well. But what really, while we knew both these things, I think what I really liked about what Sinan said is that there's a responsibility that we hold as a content creator or as a content consumer. So I have always been thinking about this as a content creator and having a small influence on the people that I create content on. Maybe in this channel you would see less number of subscribers, but I've got a YouTube channel which has 100,000 plus subscribers, and a Facebook page with about 300k odd subscribers. So there's always there's a small influence that you can create through your content. I always think, is my content creating a positive or a negative impact on people who consume that content? And I would never say that it is always creating a positive impact, because some of the times the content that I create are very something that I immediately want to do, and then I go ahead and create the content without thinking a lot, and then probably the impact of that is negative. I'm always, as a content creator, trying to see if at least there might be a short term, there might be people who will disagree with you, but in long term, the message that you're putting across over there is going to have a positive impact or not. So as a content creator, I think there is a lot of responsibility I would hold, and that responsibility increases as your influence also increases on social media. Now, as a content consumer, there is again a set of responsibility in order to ensure that the content that you consume, the content that gets shown to you, is the good content, the positive content, because you should only be looking at those content. And if the algorithm doesn't understand whether that content is, because you have been always clicking on content that you feel good about, not necessarily what is good for you. What you feel good about and what is good for you might not be the same thing. So there is a responsibility for us all as content consumers to ensure that we click the content that we think or that is good for us. How do we know that? Sometimes we have to really look at, do we have any bias? Why do we want to consume this content? And that why answer would really help us to really know what responsibility and how we kind of exercise our freedom in terms of consuming. So that was an interesting aspect that Sinan mentioned. Another interesting thing that when I was reading the book, that I figured out was that we all have this reactions, right? When you put a video, when you put a post on Facebook or any of the social media, you have this like button. So, and like button has this major dopamine rush that gives to people, and it's the impact of it is more for younger people, because it can really impact the way they start thinking and they start perceiving the world, and they interacting with people feeling bad for if they get less likes, and people feeling overjoyous if they get more likes. And when you get more likes, you start believing that what you said was true, but that is not necessarily necessarily right, because you might get a lot of likes because you've said something that appeals to the majority of your followers, but that doesn't mean it is right. So so this whole like button, and you do have a lot of emoticons. You can people can put angry face, people can put sarcastic and smileys, and all those kind of stuff would be possible. But still, what Sinan mentions is that maybe if we have something like this is you have a button that says, or a reaction that says, this is knowledge, which means I learned something new when I consume this content, or something that says this is truth, or this is fact, or this is right, or an a emoticon, or a just like the like button, one reaction that says that this is false, this is not right, or this is not the way it should be. So if you put a different kind of reactions available on social media, then probably you will start having a self-regulation of what kind of content, because everyone thinks that they are consuming content which makes them better. No one wants to be worse than what they were, right? They always want to be better. But the question of what is this being better is a very interesting debate, because most of the people would agree on a content because it reinforces their own biases, their own thinking. But is that what we really want from social media? Do you want to reinforce your own bias and your own thinking, or do you want to be challenged by content that is available over there, which will make you think and probably take you in a journey that would help you learn much more than what you're talking about? So I think that would really be beneficial. And I think that was a very interesting aspect that I read from. See, it's a 300 plus page book, and there's a lot of things in the book, and you should read the book. I'm not going to go through what it is. It definitely does talk about how social media can disrupt elections, and how is it going to be impacting our economy, and obviously our health, and our democracy and everything. But I think there is an element of education that is there, which we can use social media to educate ourselves on a lot of things, even to check what our biases and thinking are, and see if there is any alternative way of looking at what we already think or believe in. But that has to be intentional. It doesn't come, you cannot expect the algorithm to take the responsibility of teaching you and making you a better person. I don't think that if we don't have a responsibility to change and be better, you cannot expect an algorithm or someone else to do that for you. So I think there's a personal responsibility that we have in terms of what we consume, why we consume, the intention behind it, and after the consuming of that content, what should you be? Where should you be? Should you be a little better than before consuming it, or would you be worse than that? So that's a choice we have, and I think that choice is something that we should exercise. Yesterday, I was hearing someone say that one of the another problems with the hype machine or social media that becomes so much a part of our life. One of the things is you are what you tweet. I heard that and I was thinking, yes, because if you tweet something very controversial, whatever you've tweeted till that, and I don't mean just tweet, but even a post on Facebook or anything that you do, you will be judged for that one controversial stuff. So does that mean you shouldn't be talking about things that are controversial? No, but that always, at least for me as a content creator, that always says, okay, right, do you want to say this? Most of the things, interestingly, that you speak, because I do social commentary other than the book reviews, I do social commentary, and sometimes what you think is that if you overthink on an issue, you will think it is very trivial, because most of the issues that get really hyped up in the world are things that are trivial. And I think the important issues never get surfaced, never get discussed. But knowing what are the important issues, you need some time. So one of the things that I did starting last week, so I have this YouTube channel and Facebook following on Malayalam content that I put. And one of the decisions I did is that I'm going to make only one video, and that's going to be end of the week on a Saturday. I'll publish it, and I'll call it Unpacking the Week. So every data, every information that comes to us, every content that comes to us, every news that happens, I get tons of emails and tons of messages on my inbox asking that why don't you talk about this? This is an issue that you need to talk about, and many times it's needed that you need to unpack. There's so much stuff in that information that you need to start unpacking. How do you unpack it? You cannot unpack it on a day-to-day basis as to that's the most important thing that you have to do. But if you wait for a week, maybe some of those issues don't need any unpacking because it unravels itself over a period of time. Just that you would not be able to create a content on that, and that's okay. If you don't make a content on a topic that you have something to say today, it's okay if you don't say something. If you waiting for 4 or 5 days on an issue is going to make that issue obsolete, then why talk about it today? But if you think that issue is still something that you need to talk about, then whether it is 4 days down the line, 5 days down the line, 1 week down the line, speak about it. So I think it's a very interesting book, because more than what is put in the 300 pages, when you read that book, you've got another 1,000 pages of information that you can really think through. So thanks, Sinan, and thanks to Vasant, through whom I got to Vasant's podcast, Brave New World, through which I got to listen to Sinan, and obviously my friend who introduced me to Vasant's podcast. So read the book, The Hype Machine, and follow Sinan Aral and see what else he is coming up with in terms of, because Hype Mission is there to stay and we are all part of it. Whether we are inside it or outside it, we are in one way or the other connected to it. So let's see how best we can do that and how best we can use that information. So anyway, you guys take care, be content, be pen positive, stay safe, and please be kind. Thank you.